Horace Mann was born on May 4, 1796 in Franklin, Massachusetts. His father was a farmer without much money. From 10 years of age to 20, he had no more than 6 weeks schooling during any year, but he had made use of the town library. At the age of 20, he enrolled at Brown University and graduated in 3 years as valedictorian. He then studied law for a short time in Wrentham, Massachusetts, and was a tutor of Latin and Greek and a librarian at Brown University. During 1822, he also studied at Litchfield Law School and in 1823 was admitted to the bar in Dedham, Massachusetts. Mann was elected to the legislature in 1827 and in that role was active in the interests of education, public charities, and laws for the suppression of intemperance and lotteries. He established the State Lunatic Asylum in Worcester and in 1833 was chairman of its board of trustees. Mann continued to be returned to the legislature as representative from Dedham until he was removed to Boston in 1833. While in the legislature, he was a member and part of the time chairman of the Committee for the Revision of the State Statutes, and a large number of salutary provisions were incorporated into the code of his suggestion. After their enactment, he was appointed one of the editors of the work and prepared its marginal notes and its references to judicial decisions. He was elected to the Massachusetts State Senate from Boston in 1835 and was its president in 1836 to 1837. As a member of the Senate, he spent time as the majority leader and aimed his focus at infrastructure, funding the Constitution, the construction of the railroad and canals. It was not until he was appointed secretary in 1837 of the newly created Board of Education of Massachusetts that he began the work which was to place him in the foremost rank of American educators. Previously, he had not shown any special interest in education. He was encouraged to take the job only because it was a paid office position established by the legislature. He began as secretary of the board. On entering on his duties, he withdrew from all the other professional or business engagements and from politics. Mann traveled to every school in the state so he could physically examine each school ground. He planned and inaugurated the Massachusetts Normal School System in Lexington, Barre, and Bridgewater, and began preparing a series of annual reports which had a wide circulation and were considered as being among the best expositions, if indeed they are not the very best ones, of the practical benefits of a common school education both to the individual and to the state. By his advocacy of the disuse of corporal punishment in schools discipline, he was involved in a controversy with some of the Boston teachers that resulted in the adoption of his views. In 1838, he founded and edited the Common School Journal. In this journal, Mann targeted the public school and its problems. His 6 main principles were: the public school should no longer remain ignorant, that such education should be paid for, controlled, and sustained by an interested public, that this education will be best provided in schools that embrace children from a variety of backgrounds, that this education should be non-sectarian, that this education must be taught by the spirit, methods, and discipline of a free society, and that education should be provided by well-trained professional teachers. Mann worked for more and better equipped school houses, longer school years, higher pay for teachers, and a wider curriculum. Mann hoped that by bringing all children of all classes together, they could have a common learning experience. This would also give an opportunity to the less fortunate to advance in the social scale, and education would be equalize the conditions of men. Moreover, it was viewed also as a road to social advancement by the early labor movement and as a goal of having common schools. Mann also suggested that by having schools, it would help those students who did not have appropriate discipline in the home. Building a person's character was just as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic. Instilling values such as obedience to authority, promptness in attendance, and organizing the time according to bell ringing helped students prepare for future employment. Mann faced some resistance from parents who did not want to give up the moral education to teachers and bureaucrats. The normal schools trained mostly women, giving them new career opportunities as teachers. The practical result of Mann's work was a revolution in the approach used in the common school system of Massachusetts, which in turn influenced the direction of other states. In carrying out his work, Mann met with bitter opposition by some Boston schoolmasters who strongly disapproved of his innovative pedagogical ideas, and by various religious sectarians who contended against the exclusion of all sectarian instruction from the schools. Mann is often called the father of American public education. While Mann affirmed that our public schools are not theological seminaries and that they were debarred by law from inculcating the peculiar and distinctive doctrines of any one religious denomination among us, or all that is essential to religion or to salvation, he assured that those who objected to this secular nature, that our system earnestly inculcates all Christian morals. It founds its morals on the basis of religion. It welcomes the religion of the Bible, and in receiving the Bible, it allows it to do what it is allowed to do in no other system, to speak for itself. But here it stops, not because it claims to have compassed all truth, but because it disclaims to act as an umpire between hostile religious opinions. Rather than sanctioning a particular church, as was often in norm in many states, the legislature prescribed books calculated to favor the tenets of any particular set of Christians. In the spring of 1848, he was elected to the United States Congress as a Whig to fill the vacancy caused by the death of John Quincy Adams. His first speech in the role was in advocacy of his rights and duties to exclude slavery from the territories, and in a letter in December of that year he said, "I think the country is to experience serious times. Interference with slavery will excite civil commotion in the South, but it is best to interfere. Now is the time to see whether the Union is a rope of sand or a band of steel." Again he said, "I consider no evil as great as slavery, and I would pass the Wilmot Proviso, whether the South rebel or not." During the first session, he volunteered as counsel for Drayton and Sayers, who were indicted for stealing 76 slaves in the District of Columbia, and at the trial was engaged for 21 successive days in their defense. In 1850, he was engaged in a controversy with Daniel Webster in regard to the extension of slavery and the fugitive slave law. Mann was defeated by a single vote at the ensuing nominating convention by Webster's supporters, but on appealing to the people as an independent anti-slavery candidate, he was re-elected, serving from April 1848 until March 1853. In September 1852, he was nominated for governor of Massachusetts by the Free Soil Party, and the same day was chosen president of the newly established Antioch College at Yellow Spring, Ohio. Failing in the election for governor, he accepted the presidency of the college, in which he continued until his death. There he taught economics, philosophy, and theology. He was popular with students and with lay audiences across the Midwest who attended his lectures promoting public schools. Mann also employed the first woman faculty member to be paid on an equal basis with her male colleagues, Rebecca Pennell, his niece. His commencement message to the class of 1859 was to be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. He collapsed shortly after the 1859 commencement and died that summer. Antioch historian Robert Straker wrote that Mann had been crucified by crusading sectarians. Ralph Waldo Emerson lamented what seems the fatal waste of labor and life at Antioch. Mann's wife, who wrote in anguish that the blood of martyrdom waters the spot, later disinterred his body from Yellow Springs. He is buried in the North Burial Ground in Providence, Rhode Island, next to his wife, Charlotte Messer Mann.